Now I'm going to just quickly introduce our two speakers and let them get started on the project, which is why I know all of you are here. Juhee Lee-Hartford is the founding principal and managing partner of River Architects, which works on a bunch of different types of buildings, but residences, multifamily, and commercial buildings that are all FIAS focused. River Architects also serves as a strategic advisor to communities throughout New York as part of the state's downtown revitalization initiative, which is, it's great to hear that, Juhee, because like historic preservation and main streets go hand in hand. And Josh Edmonds is our second speaker. He's principal of Simple Integrity, LLC. He's a certified passive house consultant and builder, and is a native of Cooperstown, New York, where he and River Architects have also collaborated on a different FIA certified multifamily property designed to blend into the historic streetscape of Cooperstown called Chestnut Crossing. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys because we're so excited to hear about this project.
All right. I think Juhee's going to share her screen, but we are really excited to share a little bit about Bank Lofts. It has been a fantastic journey, and it's opening in about a week or so, and so we're really excited on the construction side as we are cleaning and wrapping up details. So, Juhee, I'll let you start.
Thank you, Josh. And before I forget, I wanted everybody to know that there's a slide here at the end that invites everybody to our open house on September 20th, just to keep your eyes out for that. And thank you, Passive House Accelerator team, for creating this platform and inviting us. I mean, we're just so honored. And we are, of course, very excited about this project called the Bank Lofts. It is a carbon neutral, passive house retrofit of 1880s First National Bank of Richfield Springs. And it is about 20 minutes north of Cooperstown. Richfield Springs, back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, was a popular vacation destination with sulfur springs, etc. And it was and will be a mixed-use building. Our clients do a lot. LLC hired us, and their vision for this building is providing a much-needed housing on upper floors and commercial on the ground floor. There will be one ADA accessible apartment on the ground floor as well. As we all know, I mean, Passive House is future-proofing our building stock, as rich as this historic building, with robust and durable envelope, thermal, which results in thermal and oral comfort. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but that is the main reason why historic retrofit should be done in a passive house method, just for longevity and durability and comfort. And so our client's vision was to utilize this building as also economic catalyst for the area. They fell in love with the building, as you might have heard on the video, and they really wanted to give back to the community. And you'll see that the need for housing is immediately met because, as our marketing consultant Marjorie Gage was saying, that renting the apartment in this building was the easiest thing to do. And so, as Beverly mentioned, this is a winner of NYSERDA's Building of Excellence in Early Design Support, and CNCD, a carbon neutral community economic development grant, which will enable our clients to provide that economic catalyst that we mentioned. And with that grant, replicability and importance of preserving historic fabric were the focus. And as you can see, I mean, it's not that we will be able to do panelized construction here, but we used as much panelized insulation where applicable, etc. And so, but a fun fact, there's so many fun facts about this building, but because of the economic boom of the era, this building is really essentially a brick veneer with timber and wood framing. And in the old days, the bank only occupied half of the lower level, and the hardware and general store occupied the east side, and there were hotels up on upper floor. But then the Great Depression and new highway that bypassed the community brought down the economy of the area, and then this building sat vacant for many years. One interesting fact is that the building did go through some renovation in the early 1900s, before the Great Depression, and they had used the upper level to print money. And then the bank also took over the entire ground floor and etc. Let's see. So this is how our clients acquired the building. Just for a note here, because in the earlier stage of the project, we were going for historic preservation tax credit, which this facade came into play, which meant that we couldn't really touch this facade. But we'll go into that a little bit further. But let's see. Josh, maybe this is a good time for you to jump in.
Yeah, so it was a really neat project. When the clients first had us do a walkthrough, the building was mostly gutted, and which we found to be kind of a nice thing because it's just a whole lot more of a mess to deal with. The building had been let go for a number of decades and had been vacant for a couple decades. And so we encountered a lot of structural issues, a lot of dry rot, a lot of regular wet rot. The building has a semi-flat roof with a center drain, and that drain had been leaking for a couple decades. And so the center core of the building had dropped about 6 inches. And so every floor level, the outsides had remained true, but the centers were all dropped. And then as we started peeling off layers, we'd find more and more just things that had to be remediated. But the thing the building had going for it was it's a beautiful box. And as all of us passive house people know, a box is a really efficient structure. We just got to put something on top to shed the root, to shed the water, and then you let the architects make it look pretty. And so that was the one thing that this building really had going for it, was sort of its overall structure. And then we had to kind of work through different things that you wouldn't encounter on a new building. On a new building, you can design your air barriers and your insulation layers, and it's all really straightforward. But on this building, we had all the exterior brick that was kind of in the way, but it was staying put. And so we had to kind of work through and come up with a strategy to provide our insulation and air sealing and provide some level of risk assessment as we kind of detailed the layers. So.
And one more thing to add here is that so our office is very in tune with historic preservation, but what we were not familiar with was the historic tax credit requirements, which made things more stringent. And so in terms of historic preservation tax credit point of view and requirements, the removal of these historic beams or floor joists is not viewed as favorably, but in this scenario, it was just pulverized and dry rotted, and so we explained to them that we had to remove them. But nice notes such as signatures of the workers on the basement were saved. And
we were able to save a ton of historic fabric. But occasionally you encounter stuff that's just missing or completely shot. And so you do your best with that.
So since we're tight on time, I'll save the history of the vault for a little bit later, maybe Q&A, we get to talk about this a little bit, but in 1911, early 1900s, the bank went through that expansion. Steel beams and columns were added, and these are some historic fabrics that still remained despite the previous owners' gut renovation efforts. And you can see the dilapidated window conditions with the daylight coming through. And this is just a quick overview of the building, where we have some outdoor units above, insulated hatch. And this was the earlier phase where I was trying to propose all aligned windows. But apparently for SHPO tax credit purposes, that is also looked down upon, because they want to preserve a historic fabric of certain era and time. And we also have some covered carport for solar panels, not as many as shown here, but and this is where we landed. And Josh, I'm sorry, did you want to add anything to that previous slide?
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, the building it was able to be purchased with the lot behind it, which gave us space for solar panels and parking, which is it's a necessary part of development. And so this project was really just a beautiful project for that.
Roof drains. I recall we had some challenges with roof drains. Maybe
Yeah, so we wanted to shift away from that center drain, which had been a problem. And if you've ever dealt with insurance, one of the questions they ask on flat roofs is there a center drain? Because they really don't like them. And so we ended up reframing the roof, overframing some valleys on it to shift all the water towards two side scuppers, which we could then take down in downspouts. The depth of the renovations on this building, with the engineers essentially had us sister literally every single floor joist in the building. Most of them were just underspanned for what we needed. And the same with the roof. The roof every single joist had to be sistered, which meant pulling up all the sheathing and different things like that. But it allowed us to do a really nice new sheathing base where we can work in our air seals. And then we did exterior insulation, rigid rock wool on top of that. And then our rubber roof on top of that. And then the crickets that allowed us to shift the water also allowed us to have some level of venting in that airspace, because with our zip system sheathing, 8 inches of mineral wool, and then EDPM roofing, it creates a sort of vapor sandwich that WUFI hydrothermal modeling picked up on, and it didn't flag it as a risk, but it flagged it close. And so we added venting on our hipped sections, and it was enough that it dropped the hydrothermal risk right down. So, and all the things that it's all the things you encounter on a remodel project that if it was brand new, you could design all these things in, but on a remodel, you don't know what you find till you start peeling everything back. And I have some extra construction photos for Q&A session as well. So yes, this is where we landed, and towards the end of our project, well, at that point, Josh was already in construction. We couldn't wait much longer. So we decided to drop the historic tax credit that gave us much more flexibility. So when we dropped the request for historic tax credit, SHPO allowed us to change that door, that funny door of the old egress door that we didn't need anymore. So we were able to copy and construct a similar window. We were not allowed to change this to make this alignment, but we were allowed to make these changes. The fear that SHPO had was that triple glazed windows and extra insulation towards the inside would thicken the wall, would make the historic building look awkward. And that was the biggest concern. But they did in the end, because we were not
pursuing historic tax credit, they did allow us to put in a triple glazed window and extra insulation. And extra insulation also kind of went hand in hand with the structural reinforcement, deeper framing, etc. One note here is that, I mean, we would have loved to have installed wood windows, but these are actually for cost effective and maintenance point of view, we decided to go with UPVC windows, which is really hard to tell, from the street level. So we're quite proud of where we landed, trying to hit the sweet spot between the historic look as well as the cost and maintenance. One thing to note is that UPVC window has a little slightly wider muntins. So instead of, say, 25/1, we proposed 16/1, and Shippo did accept that. And so there's a close-up. And just to show you, our floor plan for the residential unit was as tight as it can be, with a very minimized hallway. This is probably one of the compact hallways you'll see in a multifamily, and maximized bedroom. And also having these apartments with the plumbing core in the middle enabled us to condense our piping for hot water and HVAC. This is just to show you our air barrier and thermal barrier strategies. As you know, each apartment unit had to be separate. There was some attic space that was left out of the, that was also not part of the not part of the apartment airtight envelope. The stair was separate. The mechanical space, we decided to keep the basement outside of the air barrier, and yet have a mildly conditioned, mildly tempered mechanical space. Josh will tell us a little later how certain challenges that we faced. We had wished at the end that perhaps the basement should have been part of the commercial thermal envelope. And just a quick run through. So as with any Brooklyn brownstone construction you might have seen, as Josh would like to say, while we had this perfect, easy rectangle to work with, buildings were in the way, all the existing joists and such. So running air barrier up the interior was challenging. The exterior, because this was a brick veneer with the air gap, we decided to treat the brick facade with Viscon, like a water repellent, and then there's an existing wood lath sheathing in just behind the air barrier. And since that could get wet, we said, why don't we use mineral wool between, and then air barrier would help us separate that moisture drive. And so in the interior service cavity, after all the services have been run, Josh also finished that with the sprayed paper-based cellulose. Josh, anything you would like to add here?
I think one of the challenges with retrofitting buildings like this is figuring out an air barrier. On new construction, again, it's just so easy. You've designed in and you put it together as you go. But on this project, it was a little bit of a tricky one because the brick was already there. And but the strategy here ended up being, after we did 2 layers of insulation, we did a smart membrane. And I know there's a few different manufacturers that make them, but it was an airtight membrane that allowed some drying potential into the building, but stopped vapor drive from any of the interior moisture from getting into that cavity. And the floors, we did new Advantech subfloor on each level, and we taped the seams. That way we had compartmentalized air sealing, because we have to blower door test each individual unit. And then we were able to tape that smart membrane on the wall right to the Advantech. And they did a really nice job with that. And then on our top level ceiling, again, we used a smart membrane, and that was able to tape. And so our upper three sides, we had a really fantastic air seal. The only tricky part of the building was really the basement, where we had an old stone rubble type foundation, and all kinds of stone pillars coming up in it, and all kinds of just concrete and steel, and just kind of a whole mix of things. And so the basement proved to be the most difficult air sealing. Yeah, that was kind of the thing. The big takeaway was basements are tricky on these things.
And because of our historic parapet height and limited amount of insulation we can put on the roof, this is that vapor sandwich that Josh was talking about, that we also, number one, we ended up with more insulation. Oh, well, this isn't the exact area, but in some cases we had more insulation in the floor joist than the above. And so, and also having this being a taped zip layer and then waterproofing on top of that, we were getting some vapor drive, that vapor sandwich that we're talking about. And because there were some actually gaps from this within this insulation, Josh was able to install air vents, which helped mitigate the moisture that was building up. And just a quick, we will share the slides with you after this, but these two section diagrams that we're showing here is to just show how condensed our system was. The hot water heater was in the basement, that mildly tempered basement, and then the ERV system, we had two ERV systems, one for the commercial and one for the residential, housed in the basement, and then each other floor had ERV serving the units on that particular floor. And as we learned in our previous project, Chestnut Crossing, that it is best to decentralize our mechanical system, as well as keep the duct lengths as short as possible. And this slide, Josh, you can share what you had to go through.
Yeah, just on the couple notes on the mechanicals, actually, if you want to jump back 2 slides to the hot water, we did kind of a central hot water plant here. We used 2 Sanco hot water heaters, 219-gallon tanks, and they have a recirculating loop that runs just straight up to the 3rd floor and back down, and it's a smart loop. So not only does it only activate when the temperature drops down to, I think, 87 degrees or whatnot, but it also has like an algorithm where it actually tracks water usage and time of day, and it factors all of that in. And so if it has noticed that nobody ever uses hot water between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., even when the temperature drops on that loop, it won't activate the pump. And so it only cycles when it knows that there's sort of normal demand. And so that's kind of a neat system, but the loop was really short because all we had to do was run up 2 floors, because the hot water heaters are essentially right below the loop in the basement. And so that worked really well. And then if we jump to the ERV slide next, we opted to do 1 ERV per floor, essentially, because that way it was a lot easier for running it, and we had the capacity. And when you go to commission it, it's a lot easier to commission when you're all on the same floor. And as compact as the layout is, I mean, it's still just a lot of spaghetti tubes, and they take up a lot of space as as you need to run them to different places. But this definitely worked quite well, and I think it was literally like a 4 or 5 day install for the whole building on the ventilation. And so that was a pretty quick turnaround.
You said commissioning also was faster this way, right?
Commissioning was very fast here. Chestnut Crossing, that's a different conversation, but that was a larger system and it was more interconnected, and it took a lot longer to commission because there was so many different pieces to it.
Okay, and there were some air challenging. How are we doing with time? I think we have 3 more slides.
Okay. So the airtightness, again, I think on the existing buildings, it's one of the hardest pieces. And again, the basement was really tricky. But if you look to the right there, that green zip, that happens to be an interior compartmental wall as opposed to an exterior, but the details were very similar. But you can see the joists running through it at the top. And if you remember from earlier, I mentioned that all the joists in this building had to be sistered. And we framed right along and we sistered all the joists. And then we started doing air sealing details. And we realized that, wow, there's just the slightest crack between each of those joists and they go through our air barrier. And if you figure maybe it's only 1 CFM, but we have this condition replicated 1,000 times on each side of the building, on each floor as it stacks up, which is 1,000 CFM, which is higher than our air tightness target. And so we reached out to River Architects and to our passive house rater, and James Hartford from River and our passive house rater Troy Hodis, they essentially both came back with the same idea, and they said, well, why don't you just snake a little drill bit right at your air barrier straight up through the 2 joists, and then insert like the straw from gun foam and pull the trigger and pull it out, and you'll insert like a nice little bead of gun foam in between each of the joists. It worked beautifully. It was fast, and that's sort of the team collaboration that these types of projects kind of require, because we talked about caulking the entire seam. We talked about, all kinds of ideas, but times 1,000, it would take forever. And so that scenario worked really well to kind of deal with that condition. And with the basement, we ended up spraying Viscon. We had to parge the stone first because it was just too many voids. And then we sprayed Viscon on the inside of the wall, right up into the floor joists and things like that.
And another tricky.
Go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead.
Another tricky area that we ran into is this beautiful tile, historic tile, transitioning to wood floor. The Avantac were taped, but this joint became tricky.
Yeah, a lot of the building, the subfloors were kind of toast, and so we were able to replace that with new subfloor, which gave us the opportunity to tape it. But in the commercial space, we had the most historic fabric intact, and we did have a beautiful mosaic tile floor that we were saving, but it was kind of a mix of, it was poured on a couple inches of concrete, and then it had penetrations through it all over and all kinds of stone walls in the basement underneath supporting it. And so it was a real nightmare for air sealing, which kind of brought up some of our discussions on whether we include the basement in the full envelope or not. And we did end up essentially constructing it as if the basement is fully insulated and airtight with the building when kind of the dust settles.
Okay, and just a few more slides on this. We don't need to go too much into detail, but on our project, we decided to include the commercial space as part of the FIA certification. And so we did 2 separate zones. This is for the multifamily, and previous slide was for the commercial space. And I also wanted to introduce you to our other team member, D. George, who went through so much trouble to not only to make the WUFI models pass with all the existing conditions, the large west-facing windows. She's also the person who behind all these beautiful renderings and the diagrams. And so hopefully she'll jump on and tell me what I've missed. But yes, so just to show you, we passed, and he can explain what we had to go through to make that work. I know we're running a little bit over time, so I just wanted to say thank you so much. And so this is the slide that we'll share with you. Open house, September 20th, Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. It's in Richfield Springs. We hope to see you there. And so we have some lessons learned so I made the jump into our presentation without doing a proper introduction. D, for example, represents our firm and the ethos that we have, integrating the art and the science, behind architecture. We strive to create beautiful buildings, historic or new, historic or contemporary, but understanding, the building science, the energy modeling, and passive house hygrothermal movement. And Josh, as you can tell, he's not just a passive house builder, but also passive house consultant, and his firm also provides mechanical engineering for all of his projects. And therefore, all of that and like-minded, values and passion about passive house and sustainability made this team just so flawless, just easy to work with. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say flawless, but flow easily.
All right. Yeah, it's been, as a company, we've enjoyed working with Juhee and her team at River on other projects, and we have another one coming up, and they're a really good group because we're all on the same page. And so, yeah, I guess we want to hit these lessons learned. We did find it difficult trying to merge both NYSERDA and SHPO. And I think that what we've done at the end is a pretty successful project. We didn't end up with the tax credits, but we did successfully make it through SHPO and NYSERDA's parameters and whatnot. And also, we have our clients' goals that we have to kind of keep in mind and budget and everything like that. And so at the end of the day, it wasn't easy. And I don't know if we would try hitting tax credits and grants at the same time, but on this project, it went reasonably well.
And being the optimist that I am, I hope that this will open doors for future SHPO or historic tax credit pursuant projects. Because, for example, we learned on this project a little bit late that at the federal National Park Services level, they have approved triple glazed windows for historic tax credit. So I think top down, I think the message needs to come, so that's what I'm hopeful about.
Yeah, we mentioned airtightness is probably one of the most difficult things with existing buildings. But every year there's more and more products and techniques available. And so I think that's only getting easier. The basement, I think in the future, we would fully condition basements and just kind of bring it right inside the whole envelope. And so, yeah. Brick buildings and kind of having the brick there and not having a great way to have an air sealed or a water barrier behind that without removing the brick just kind of made us all work a little bit harder to make sure that we had enough buffering in our wall assembly to account for any possible moisture. The sealing on the outside of brick actually went really well. That was a neat sealer. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it was not only does it repel bulk water, but it also allows some water to move from the brick out so that it kind of accounts for what happens when the sun hits it and things like that. And then one of the interesting things about the project, so it's 9 apartments in a commercial space. And for the longest time, we didn't know who our commercial tenant was going to be, which was, it's hard to design a building when you don't know who the commercial tenant is. Now we have the commercial tenant, and it was also a neat thing, but we rented all 9 apartments in 2.5 weeks. And so that was kind of a huge win for the client, just because it kind of solidifies their, I don't know, investment in the community, that it was well received. And then I know that River, you guys have had to put in a ton of hours on the Woofy model and all the coordination and things like that.
Right, which 94 hours was on a new a multifamily that we did together. That was just all new construction, and 270 hours was the historic, renovation of the bank loft. And Dee can explain, maybe during our Q&A, Dee can explain why, what challenges, she ran into. Oh, and one more shout out to Marjorie Gage, and she put this beautiful invitation together, plus the website. We strongly recommend you to visit. I believe this is the QR code to the project website, which really embodies what it takes, to do Passive House. Just all of our team members were just so keen on delivering the beauty and the science, together. And so Marjorie really understood what we were after, and she did a beautiful job. And so that's where you can read more about the history of the building, etc.
Yep.
And
great.
Yep, and there's her contact information. So I'll be happy to share this slide.
Okay. Questions?
Wow, what a great presentation, you guys. This thing's fantastic. So just we'll give you a bit of a break because we're going to turn over to Zach to thank sponsors.
Absolutely. Thank you, Juhee and Josh. That was awesome. I just want to take a moment to thank the fine organizations that make our work possible here at House Accelerator. So a big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA. Also, thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingwe Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. Thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, PH Air Seal, and Source 2050. And thanks to our patron sponsors, Brennan, Holstrom System, Innotech Windows and Doors, Lamelux, Longboard, RDH Building Science, and Sanderson Design. Thank you, sponsors.
Excellent. Okay, let's get.
May I thank NYSERDA for enabling us to, the grant also came with marketing budget, which enabled us to put together that beautiful website, as well as our extraneous WFI model studies and etc.
Yeah, well said, Juhee. And we're going to say this again later, but there's a deadline coming up for NYSERDA's Buildings of Excellence demonstration, round 5. The deadline is at 3 p.m. Eastern next Wednesday, the 18th. And we'll have a link or I think we already have a link. Kim just put it in again. So if you want to apply for funds, now's the time to get that application together.
Yeah, we'll see how many people will be cramming at the last minute while we run through next week's construction tech, and a few screens might be off as people are firing away to get their application in. So great stuff. All right, let's dive into questions. We got a great list, great questions, and George, you get to kick it off. George, where you at?
Oh wow, I'm here.
There you go. Fire away.
Yeah, I may not have heard this right. I thought that there was a statement at the beginning that this is a carbon neutral project, and I was wondering what that means for this project. And there's something about a CNDC grant.
Yes, carbon neutral, meaning minimizing the embodied energy as well as fossil fuel free design. So that's what we've accomplished.
Yeah, terminology is always so difficult these days. When you say, net zero or high performance or passive house, is it certified? Is it not certified? Carbon neutral. And so for us, that was an all electric building with solar panels was kind of how we targeted that.
And this is within the context of NYSERDA's Carbon Neutral Community Economic Development Program, CNCED. So
Yes.
I think that's part of the reason that the term carbon neutral is kind of part of the conversation.
Cool, thanks.
George, you good with those answers? Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see the solar panels go up over the parking in the back there. That looks really cool. Like when we're able to have that nice balance. Lindsay.
Hi, everyone, and thank you. That was amazing presentation. I've got my architect hat on for the moment, and I just wanted to ask you, how did you deal with the, in New York, I mean, certainly here in Manhattan, we are not allowed, we must have 12-inch minimum clearance on one side of every door and 18 inches on every side of every other door. And I noticed how compact your vestibule was to each apartment. were you required to comply with those regulations?
We have ADA unit downstairs on the ground level. So the other units were not ADA requirement. Yeah, we were not required to meet ADA on the upper levels.
Thanks.
Great. Lindsay, over to Nikita.
Yeah, thanks. And hi, Juhee. Thank you so much for the presentation. Good to see you. So I'm curious, who was the window manufacturer on the UPVC windows?
Yarrow.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much.
Actually, yes, there was actually a very lengthy strategies that we went through with Yarrow, because apparently Yarrow is the supplier for that federally approved SHPO. I'm sorry, that was not a SHPO, that was Massachusetts project. And so they had informed us about that. And then when that was no-go, then they strategized every month with us, on the UPVC. They were very strategic because we also had to keep the historic casing, the brick mold, just aligning everything.
Yeah, they definitely went above and beyond what a normal window manufacturer would typically do. But I think both us and River Architects have worked with them on numerous projects, and so they've always been a good option.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at those windows and you start to tie into the original, and there's building science and a whole bunch of different connections, and keeping water out of the buildings is what we're trying to do. And sometimes those old details don't work as well as they used to. So
yeah,
great to see that those details come together.
And a lot of the exterior trim remained in place, and the windows come in behind it. And so the curves had to match all the original curves. You couldn't, start them an inch higher. They had to sort of hit at all their points. So, yeah.
Crazy details. Next up is Marcus. Marcus, you with us? Marcus,
Yeah.
question. Oh, there you go. Great.
Yeah, I think my question was about the crickets on the roof, because I know you had talked about the hydrothermal concerns there, and I'm not quite sure I understand. So if you've got your rigid above the deck and you have sufficient rigid there to keep the sheathing above the dew point, is there any reason why you didn't just form the crickets with tapered foam?
Yeah, I can take that. So we have a roof that actually slopes towards the middle, and we had continuous sheathing on that, and then we did a continuous 8 inches of insulation on top of that. We used rigid rock wool, so like 4-inch thick rock wool boards, and we looked into tapering the insulation, but it was getting really complex, and then having a backing on top of it that we could apply the EDPM rubber roof to became kind of like a bit of a nightmare, and having fasteners long enough to go through all the insulation to capture all the way down to the roof deck. And so we ended up overframing. So we put our 8 inches of continuous insulation over the entire plane. That way the energy model was happy because it could factor in 8 inches continuous. And then we simply overframed on top of that. It ended up just being a simpler option. And then in the end, it allowed us a big enough airspace that we could actually pull moisture out of. So,
And the choice of mineral wool panels in that location, was that primarily driven just by kind of ecological reasons to avoid foam?
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The only foam we typically end up using anymore these days is underground. We
gotcha.
use in this project we actually dug the basement out in order to put EPS foam at the bottom of the project, and that's about the only foam we use anymore.
Have you used mineral wool below grade yet? Because apparently that's possible.
I've heard it's possible. We have yet to pull it off below grade, but I do know that there's a number of people out there doing it.
Well, thanks.
So, yeah.
And I should add, I have progress construction photos through the life of the project as a supplemental slides after, so if you get a copy, you'll see some.
Yeah, you guys, I'm definitely jealous of having recycled foam glass in your market that you guys can also use compared to mineral. So again, it's too costly and too much of a carbon footprint to ship it out to the West Coast, but soon enough they'll be out here. So lots of great choices for below grade, low carbon options. All right, Bev, over to you for a question.
Yeah, on the hot water, super interesting. So that Senko CO2 smart hot water system sounds really great. And I'm not sure, is that a different control added to the Senko, or is it built into the Senko? And then sort of the second part is, what other hot water options did you look at that were hot water? And then like cost comparison, like how different is that from what you're used to usually doing?
So typically, both on these projects and on sort of our single family projects, we're always only electric. So we don't deal with any gas. We don't even have natural gas really in our area. And so we're always on a heat pump for hot water, either a hybrid or a Senko style hot water heater. On this project, we looked at using hybrid heat pumps, which I'm assuming everyone is familiar with. It's the tanked hot water heater that has a heat pump on top and usually electric resistance backup. Those are less expensive than Senko. We can thank NYSERDA a bit for being able to use Senko on this project because it's probably double the cost over a hybrid system. But I think it is a better system, and especially for this building. In terms of the system on this building, the two tanks, they pipe together. And then they go into our recirculating loop. That's something that's completely separate from the Senko hot water heaters. You could use it with or without that. But that was just something that was necessary for us in order to meet all the FIAS, Energy Star, all the different program demands, as well as just for efficiency's sake, to be able to supply that hot water within 0.6 of a gallon.
And
each
8
apartment.
units, 2 compressors for the Senkos, or how many compressors?
We've got nine units, and we've got 2 compressors. And so the neat thing about the Senkos is you can pick your inside tank storage size, which is kind of neat. I think they've got a couple sizes, but we typically use either an 83 or 119 gallon tank. They also store the hot water above 140 degrees, which is great for keeping bacteria growth at bay. And we have a mixing valve. And so we mix that water temperature down, which gives us even more capacity. So.
And Lynx, the Mitsubishi, similar. Did you look at those?
I don't have any experience with those yet. I know that some other companies were starting to kind of hit the market. We typically stay small scale multifamily. Mm-hmm. And I know that if you were doing, say, 50 units or 100 units, you're going to have a whole different look at mechanicals than we would when we're looking at 20 units and less.
Thanks. Great presentation, by the way, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to head over to Kim to talk about future events. So hold on, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. I will try to keep this quick because we have some questions left. Starting off with our podcast, the final and 5th episode of our summer cooling and resiliency series dropped last week. Be sure to check that out. And we also have episode 203, speaking with Nathan St. Germain, talking about aging in place and how data-driven design can improve indoor environments. Let me actually hit enter here so I can get all the links in the chat for y'all. Next up, we have our construction tech episode next Wednesday, featuring everybody's favorite Ed May. He'll be speaking about maximizing the value of your passive house models. So we hope to see you next Wednesday. Coming up next, a reminder that the NYSERDA Buildings of Excellence Round 5 applications are due next Wednesday, as Zach mentioned. There's a link in the chat if you're interested about that. The next announcement is about the Built Environments Plus award entries. These are due, I believe, September 20th. We also have the FIAS Pro Forum event coming up. This will be in Providence, Rhode Island. This is their first event that will be very workshop focused, October 21st and 23rd. Next up, we have the NESE conference, Building Energy New York City, coming up October 24th in New York. And handing it over to Zach for a few more exciting announcements.
Yeah, that's right. So on October 18th, we're doing a Reimagine Buildings conference. This will be a half-day conference on Friday, beginning at noon Eastern. Actually 11:30 Eastern for networking and connection. Super excited about this program. It include speakers Chris Magwood, Carmel Pratt, Lois Arena, Tim McDonald, Lisa White, Nikita Reed, who's on today's call, Bomi Jung, Lindsay Shack, Tessa Bradley, Michael Ingui, and more. So we'll be diving into all the different elements that in building design and construction that need to come together to create zero carbon or to approach zero carbon building. And then on December 6th, we will be doing Reimagine Buildings Carbon Storage. Again, it'll be a half-day conference at the same time on Friday, December 6th. This is a conference that we're putting together in partnership with the Rocky Mountain Institute and Chris Magwood. So we'll be looking at low-embodied carbon materials and the potential for carbon sequestration as well, and getting into some of the exciting new products that are coming online to make all of that possible. And then on October 1st, we're super excited about this project, the Reimagine Buildings Collective. We're launching this membership community that will bring together building professionals who want to step up and tackle climate change. And we're doing that so we can gain new knowledge in peer-to-peer sharing, level up skills, in cohort-based learning, including two pretty intensive courses by Ed May on PHPP and on Woofy Passive. And we'll also be connecting people to forge the life-changing relationships we need with other practitioners to make this work. And all of that so that we can create the healthiest buildings with the smallest carbon footprint, deliver them cost-effectively and relatively headache-free, sell their benefits so they get built, and make a good living while doing it. So we hope that you'll join us on October 1st when we open the doors to that community, and we'll have more information about all that soon. Thank you.
Cool. I got shivers, Zach. Great stuff. Can't wait to have that RBC come together. We can all continue the fun conversation. So, well, we are at the top of the hour. Bev, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know it's not in our script, but any parting words from you? I know you always have great insights, and I just want to make sure you had a chance to say goodbye.
I'm just gonna say we can't have enough examples of saving old buildings and doing this kind of work. Yeah, it's more work, and you never know when you start pulling that building apart what you're gonna find, but look at that gorgeous building. So like, I just hope more people will take it on because we need to save these buildings. And thank you for sharing. Wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Great stuff, Bev. Thanks for co-hosting with me. And so, yeah, if you need to leave, you can, but we're going to be into the final 15. So you want to stick around for 15 minutes. We might get a few extra photos that were kind of stored around that we didn't have time in the presentation. That being said, again, please come back next week. Check out all the podcasts, and congrats, Accelerator 200 podcasts. I just think some of the achievements that we have, we kind of get to, 4 years of this and all the great resources. It's remarkable. And so, yeah, check out the Passive House YouTube, the Reimagine Buildings YouTube page, and keep learning, having fun, and keep collaborating with our community. That being said, we have Mark Ashby all lined up in the question queue. Mark, great to see you, and fire away with your question.
Hopefully a simple one. Apologies for going off topic in a Passive House conference, but I was curious about the single egress stair in the building, if that's permitted generally in New York, or if that's a special thing for a historic building.
We were permitted to do that because of the number of units and the usage and the number of occupants, I believe.
So under certain circumstances, it's permitted in the state?
Right. Yeah, we met the threshold. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, it was a factor of the length of the egress path and the number of people based on bedrooms. It's, that whole dealio. But yeah, it was not a special situation. It was just a normal following the code thing. But it made this building work because we didn't necessarily have the space for an elevator and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad Mark brought up. I mean, it's a hot topic here in British Columbia where legislation is putting into the single use, and our good friend Mike from Larch Lab, Michael Eisen, has helped out. So again, talk about collaboration. We dragged Mike up from Seattle to help out some code changes here, and great to see, again, examples where it works. So great that you guys are able to keep that going. Patrick, if you're still with us, you're next. And I'll give you there. Thanks, Mark. Patrick, 3, 2.
I was just
There you
looking
go.
for a link to be pasted in, which was taken care of. So I'm all set.
Perfect. Great. Yes. And again, the open house. Wish I could join again, living vicariously through all you that live locally to check it out. Again, there's a lot of really amazing passive house projects in New York that I will get to one day, but again, I get to just enjoy the West Coast ones right now. All right. Thanks, Patrick. Jessica.
Hi there. Thanks, Juhee and Josh, for the great presentation. In our market, I think one of our biggest barriers to building passive is the increasing capital costs. Probably that's pretty common, but I guess I'm wondering if you know, or if you can share what the additional cost, either per square foot or total, was to upgrade to passive house versus sort of a typical historic retrofit project.
That's always that question comes up frequently, and I realize that it's a big one. I can give you the short answer and the long answer. We are typically hitting around a 3 to 4% upcharge to go to passive house. But I think that we may be a little lower than some. We are a self-performing construction company, which is, I realize, kind of an oddity. And that's kind of one thing that does allow us to keep our costs down, because I have seen other people run into issues on some of these passive house details trying to get subcontractors who are maybe unfamiliar with the techniques or the materials, whereas that's kind of our line of work. We do passive house, and so my team wouldn't really know what to do with most code compliant buildings. They just haven't used a lot of those materials in a long time, whereas they're used to all the high performance, materials and techniques and things like that. And so we were sitting at about a 3 to 4% increase over regular construction. The developer we're also working with in this project is somebody that we have worked with before, and so passive house is in their kind of in their program, and some of that stems from these units rent all inclusive, meaning they include to the tenant electric, heat, AC, laundry, water, garbage, internet as one fixed rent. And so the passive house piece is really important to that in order to control utility cost. And so that ends up being kind of like a whole big equation, top to bottom, from construction to development, that all factors in, where passive house really makes sense for a lot of developers. So I hope that helps with the question.
Josh, great answer. And I mean, the fact that you have the experience, I mean, a lot of times, again, we talk about the dump tax, is once you learn it and do it, then you're able to, do it again. And I mean, Zach's presentation last week about just the fact of getting things, but also, and when you get the Kool-Aid of passive house, I'm sure everyone here, and if you're new, we just gave you a big dose of the passive house Kool-Aid today. But you can't go back. Everything looks just so strange. And when people understand why we do it, they're like, well, why would we not do it this way? So great comments there, Josh. Mario's iPhone. Do we have Mario's iPhone with us? Hey, Mario.
Yeah, I haven't given myself a name yet. Sorry, guys. How you doing, guys? Well, first off, I want to thank Beverly, Bruce, and Michael. They joined me in the breakout session. That was awesome. Great crew. So I'm from Southern California, and my question was, you guys haven't installed it yet, but what is the estimated kilowatt production of the solar system to be installed? And how much of a grid offset does that give you? Are you still, I don't know what the requirements are in New York. Here in Southern California, we still need to be hooked up to the grid. How much production are you allowed? And then are you storing in battery? Are you doing battery storage? Yeah, those are I'm not sure you're not going off grid, but just curious.
On this project, so we typically stay connected to the grid, just because I don't know if battery technology has caught all the way up to where we need it to be. Mm-hmm. We go through such massive periods where we have low solar production that most projects without enormous battery banks are only going to make it a couple days. And our utility providers at this point in time allow us to net meter, which is from a client perspective, it's fabulous. I don't know how it helps the overall grid health, but that's kind of how these projects have worked. We do have a pretty big solar array on this project and some other projects we've done, and they all net meter, and that's been working quite well. Here, we're pretty much just limited by the amount of solar we could install based on size in the parking lot and neighbors' trees and other buildings and just that type of thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank
Mary,
you.
I have to say is I was at the Fully Charged show here in Vancouver, which for the first time ever, I went to a car show where every single vehicle was electric. And I mean, I don't know if you've all been car junkies of your life to go to car shows, but it was great to see. And honestly, like, you know, we're not too far away where you've got those solar panels. They're just going to be charging cars below and the whole battery system. Like, it is great to see how quickly the electric car battery revolution is happening. It's
Well,
pretty
I know they're
amazing.
doing a lot of solar up there, like towards Campbell River and the Sunshine Coast up in BC, the Lower Mainland and all that. I know they're starting to do a lot of solar. I just don't know how efficient it is, or because you're so far north and you know, I used to go to White Rock a lot. So so I know that they're doing a lot of that sort of projects up there, but I'm in Southern California. Here I get 340 days of sun. The summers are over 100 degrees. So I get plenty of sun. So I just wanted to see.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
You guys get so much sun, you have to deal with the duck curve, which is another topic. So it's great stuff. So,
yeah. So yeah,
well,
we're still
Juhee,
dealing with everything
sorry.
else. We're still trying to find a way to how passive all wraps up into California, because, or at least Southern California, because of the, you know, moderate climate and all that. So yeah.
We don't have that
Great
problem
stuff.
here. When it's negative 20, everybody's freaking out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all so much. Sean, nice to meet you. You guys did fantastic work. It's beautiful. I mean, I got to walk a Brooklyn job with the guys down there with Passive Emu, and the work is fantastic. So you guys doing this, restoring a brownstone era kind of building is fantastic. I'm a big fan.
If I may
Awesome,
add
Eric.
one more thing, if anybody is coming to the open house, one of the fun part is to go into the public bathroom because we were able to expose the backside of the vault as part of the wall.
Ooh.
So yeah, that's a fun feature to see. And our client had put this gold ADA grab bars, and it just looks fantastic.
Sorry. Devin, we missed you. Devin, where you at? Where's your question?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much, everybody. Fantastically awesome project. And I'm curious about if this facade, you know, pointed, I believe in like a silicon terminated, you know, thing on the outside here. And I'm curious if this facade is back vented, and also kind of what that overframed hip roof venting looked like. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so it was a siloxane sealer that was put on the brick, and we're not putting a lot of stock in the venting behind the brick. It's an old building, and there's places where the gap is really nice, and there's places where it's full of old mortar, and so we're kind of as we were planning our wall assemblies, we're almost factoring it as if there's no vent behind the brick. And we kind of planned all of our parameters with that assumption so that we'd be working off worst case scenario, as opposed to assuming that we had fantastic venting back there. Because from what we can tell, there's no venting at the base of the wall. And there is some at the top, but it's, you know, with the old buildings, like I said, it's kind of, you get what you get and you try to kind of make the most of it. And so I guess that was your first question. And your second one was,
well,
the roof
at the
vent.
base of the, yeah, the hardscape on the exterior at the ground wall interface, that wasn't disturbed on this project, was it?
No. And so you've got sort of the parged stone on the outside that runs right into like a concrete and stone lintel, and then the brick kind of runs right up from there. Yeah,
And
if we built it,
and
good.
Mhm. And the rubble that you had there, the rubble old stuff, 100-year-old there, you built that up and cast over that and put your new sister joist onto that. Some of that was kind of deteriorated.
We ended up having to replace one section of foundation, just the stone inside. It had caved in, and so we restacked that. But then on the inside of the entire basement, you've got sort of your laid up stone, but there was sort of like, 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch, like mortar voids.
Mhm.
And so in order to get the Viscon sealer to give us an air seal through there, we just parged the inside of the stone and then did Viscon over that. A lot of the historic groups would prefer if we do that because the parge can be removed,
Okay.
exposing the old stonework,
Okay.
as opposed to, spraying right onto all the existing stuff.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And do you use Myrex on the underside of the deck, or on the underside of on the roof? Is that right?
We used Myrex on the underside of the roof. We used Myrex on the inside of all the walls. Myrex was our primary smart membrane.
And then thanks so much. And so you overframed this roof, super cool. And then you said you were able to put some hip vents up there. Were those ridge vents, or what was that?
We ended up going not right at the peak because we don't have, like, say, a soffit vent.
Yeah.
And so we need to create multiple points where the air can move.
Okay.
And so we did them kind of about mid-span down in a couple places on those, so that we could get almost like cross ventilation.
Yeah.
And
cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Those scuppers are the front and the back. Sort of, you're looking at the building from the front. Are they front and back? The two.
The roof water scuppers are both on the far side. We call it the less pretty side. The old buildings were designed with street side, with your street faces. And there was like the alley side that didn't have much going on. And so our nice downspouts come down over there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Fantastic work. Thank you so much.
Too excited. Juhee, did you want to show quickly a couple extra photos, or you got to run?
I would love to. Yes, I have
Okay.
extra
All right,
time.
we're really getting into overtime here, folks. But I got a sneak peek of these pictures, and they're really cool. If you got to run, all good. We'll put them in the video, so for afterwards. But you start to look at these details, just incredible.
Right. And Josh, I hope you're not getting shivers when you see what you've gone through.
The horrid past of construction. Yeah,
right.
no.
I guess I'll just go through it. I'm sorry. I know I'm sharing this. Okay. So there you go. That's better. And talking about the basement before the parging and Viscon. Oh, and I realized when Josh was talking, I had mixed the Viscon and siloxane on the brick. Anyway, so that was a one swap of words error that I made.
James corrected you. So.
Oh, okay. Thank goodness. Thank you, James.
It's a team.
So I don't want to spend too much time, but one of the challenges that came about, was when we removed the attic floor. We had to reinforce the structure further. That was also a fun exercise. I don't know, maybe we should just go through it just for the visual effect. This is the attic, the double. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all good. I mean, we probably could have you back for a construction tech edition, just because, I mean, even the tricky I-joist ceiling that Josh talked about, where we had to drill through. I mean, like that's a specialized trick that doesn't come out of the bag too often. But when someone doesn't follow the sequencing, that's the only trick you got to use. So glad you used it.
Yep. Right, and that's the back of the back vault that's exposed in the bathroom. And our historic tiles and these recreation of the historic details and the window installation that was happening, and the historic stair that actually got relocated from the second floor to the third floor to maintain it. Otherwise, we just couldn't find where to locate them, and some Woofy Pro model that Dee had done to test the impact, of say siloxane or the roof vent, etc. So we got the green light on that. So those are our supplementary images.
Awesome. Well, I mean, honestly, we could do a whole nother hour presentation just on those. So great stuff. But we should run. But I mean, Juhee, Josh, James, the whole team involved in this. Again, NYSERDA for all the funding and everything else. I mean, I hope you guys have a great time celebrating the project on the open house September 20th, and hopefully again, everyone that's been here today will get a chance to have a look at this project, because very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. It's always a blast to talk about the projects, and I always love seeing other people's work and seeing what they've done and just new ideas and things like that.
Oh,
yes, and check out the project website, bankloftuswego.com. Or is it the Bankloft Oswego?
I think it's banklofts.oswego.com or .org or something. If you Google it, you can find everything.
Jim just put it in chat. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and upstate New York is beautiful this time of the year. So great time to visit.